Welcome to the online program on Transdisciplinary New Media. Paris College of Art Master's students will present their ongoing research on new media. Our core lab focuses on achieving core competency in a wide variety of new media technologies. In this case, technology will be defined in the widest sense possible, not just screen-based digital technology, but also mechanical, chemical, auditory, and experimental technologies. Before we start, I would like to let you know that my talk will be in Spanish, and the rest of the presentations will be in English. The talks are live streamed at Barco Art Fair in Bogota, Colombia right now, and each speaker will have 20 minutes to present the research and 10 minutes for you to ask questions via Twitter. Enjoy the program. Low technology, en español, baja tecnología o poca tecnología, se refiere al uso de una tecnología simple, tradicional o hecha a mano. A menudo se refiere a toda la tecnología hecha antes de la revolución industrial. Las características de la baja tecnología son muy importantes, pues es fabricada o practicada con un mínimo de inversión económica y debe ser replicada fácilmente por los demás. Moda, manifiesto o nuevo camino en el arte, el low-tech tiene fácilmente limitaciones, pero a su vez enormes posibilidades por delante de ella. La baja tecnología no necesita de una especialización o clasificación especial. En este laboratorio estudiamos la baja tecnología desde su punto de vista formal. Nos interesamos en los aspectos de forma, función, herramienta, significado y público. Y también en los procesos de elaboración que son origen de toda creación, tales como la biología, las matemáticas, química, física, etc. Las metodologías nos ayudan a entender que lo importante en un proceso creativo es la transformación y el desarrollo en el cual se lleva a cabo. De otra manera, las posibilidades tecnológicas terminan siendo una cuestión solo de estilo y no de forma. Arte y ciencia han creado nuevas relaciones en esta dirección. Low-tech plantea ciertos métodos con el fin de recuperar la calidad perdida con la mecanización de estos procedimientos. Técnicamente, el arte low-tech se presenta de forma paradójica, pues es un arte con alta tecnología de ayer, con la cual se convierte en baja tecnología hoy en día. Si por mucho tiempo y aún hoy en día el arte digital insiste en estar siempre a la última con proyectos millonarios basados en tecnologías muy emergentes, el low-tech juega exactamente lo contrario. Bajos presupuestos, reciclar materiales, utilizar tecnologías desechadas y casi inservibles. Nuestras razones en este laboratorio para estudiar la baja tecnología son muy variadas. Es una cuestión de nostalgia y de saber cómo funcionan las cosas. Es una cuestión de obtener un sonido más humano, como dicen algunos músicos que siguen utilizando amplificadores de válvulas en lugar de transistores, por ejemplo. O una cuestión pedagógica de saber de dónde vienen las cosas y cómo fueron creadas. En cuanto a los nuevos medios y a nuestro eje de investigación en este laboratorio, en el Core Lab, nosotros estudiamos la baja tecnología en comunicaciones porque facilita tener un control mucho más exhaustivo con los instrumentos que utilizamos. Las tecnologías low-tech son baratas y a menudo gratis, y también es una forma alternativa de poder entender el arte digital, que todavía están muy asociados a grandes presupuestos y a grandes empresas que lo manejan. También nos permite exprimir un máximo de posibilidades de un hardware o un software, mientras que si uno está siempre detrás de la última novedad, nunca llega a dominarlo y sigue pasando de novedad en novedad. La posibilidad también de reusar y dar nuevos usos a equipos en principio obsoletos y también a las metodologías de trabajo y procedimientos que nos procuran estas metodologías. Es verdad que la baja tecnología limita, ofrece menos posibilidades, pero por eso mismo el resultado creativo puede ser mucho más interesante. La baja tecnología tiene mucha conexión con las filosofías como el software libre, el do-it-yourself, hazlo tú mismo, o el situacionismo, que en realidad viene siendo un movimiento que está muy conectado con las tendencias actuales del arte. En otras palabras, el low-tech es un estado mental que tiene su propia estética. Todo esto no significa que cualquier tiempo pasado fuera mejor, ni mucho menos, al contrario, significa una posición ética, estética e ideológica en la cual las tecnologías han de usarse, cómo deben usarse y por qué deben usarse. La baja tecnología permite alejarse un poco de este concepto de arte digital como herramienta de comunicación y de consumo por las grandes empresas tecnológicas. En conclusión, estas tecnologías, estas bajas tecnologías o esta low technology, es una forma de trabajo que se adapta a diferentes estilos gráficos, musicales o de nuevos medios. Antes de terminar, quiero subrayar 3 ejemplos importantes en el tiempo que llevan los últimos 30 años, más o menos, de art en low technology y algunas de las tipologías en low tech. El primer ejemplo que quiero mostrarles es la obra del artista, uno de los artistas más importantes, Vic Kosick. Kosick recuperó el código numérico ASCII, representado por 7 dígitos binarios, y lo asoció a pioneros a los primeros ejercicios de arte con computador para después descontextualizarlo totalmente. Como pueden ver aquí, esto nos puede hacer pensar en la película Matrix, por ejemplo, donde aparecían casi que el medio virtual matemático retomaba vida. Otro de los artistas más importantes en este movimiento es Alexei Shulgin, por ejemplo, quien desarrolla proyectos web de pensamiento low-tech, como el conocido Form, que es simplemente una página web construida exclusivamente a partir de los botones del formulario de lenguaje HTML, o según de la propia definición que dice Shulgin, es algo de arte en Internet. Otro de sus proyectos muy importantes es el 386DX, que fue la primera banda genuinamente cyberpunk, según la propia definición, en la cual era con las palabras de Shulgin, él decía que era un viejo ordenador 386, interpretando en formato MIDI versiones de famosos éxitos del rock y del pop, como Nirvana o los Sex Pistols. El computador era muy obsoleto, aquí como lo pueden ver en la siguiente imagen, e implica solamente tenía un sistema musical sobre el cual el público tiene un control total y permite revisitar estos éxitos comerciales desde una estética diferente. En este caso, obviamente, es muy minimalista y se contextualiza totalmente una música muy original. Otro de los ejemplos más conocidos son las obras de los Redundant Technology Initiative. Es un grupo que tiene su propio low-tech manifiesto en Internet, que lo pueden ver. Y una de las obras de las que les estoy mostrando es Used Futures, que consiste en recrear una ciudad en formato de maqueta, utilizando piezas recicladas de viejos computadores, como pueden ver en esta imagen. Dentro del arte low-tech podemos encontrar varias manifestaciones y formas de entenderlo y sobre todo cómo aplicarlo, que es la verdad, digámoslo así, la parte donde los artistas pueden tener libertad y la parte creativa toma forma. Una de ellas es el glitch, que es un género en sí mismo que comparte muchas características del low-tech. La imperfección de lo digital está bien patente en la forma en el que el error informático se usa como forma estética. Igualmente, el low-tech es la idea de editar una fotografía, un archivo, un sonido o un video, no con la última aplicación software, forzando los errores en los que juega el artista o de los cuales el artista va a apropiarse estéticamente. Hoy en día existen varias aplicaciones en Internet que permiten hacer el glitch fácilmente y es accesible a todo el mundo y obviamente son aplicaciones gratis. La lomografía también y su fascinación por lo analógico en estos tiempos de dominación de la fotografía digital es otro ejemplo de tipología latente. Las máquinas Lomo, además se caracterizan por un diseño muy básico, realmente low-tech, en las cuales muchas veces los mecanismos están a la vista, etc. Y también la fabricación de sus propias cámaras de manera do yourself, hazlo tú mismo. Como hay una cámara hecha con papel que se puede encontrar en Internet y la pueden bajar gratismente también. Otra de las variantes clave del low-tech es la música en los 8 bits. Es una evolución acelerada de la música electrónica. en la cual se consiguen, los artistas, los músicos tratan de conseguir los sonidos más parecidos a instrumentos reales. Y esto es lo que hace que apreciemos las posibilidades de los MIDI, los primeros sintetizadores y especialmente la música para videojuegos con ordenadores 8 bits. Hablando de juegos, de videojuegos retro, que son también otro buen ejemplo de low-tech, los cuales se pueden utilizar como elemento en un performance. Remezclando sus imágenes en un website o en un video, también se pueden llegar a hacer o a obtener obras creativas o resultados creativos hechos por artistas. Se trata de una vertiente básicamente estética que juega con la nostalgia, aunque a veces también plantea explorar las nuevas posibilidades en las cuales, en este caso, la música, que fue la música basada en los 8 bits, fueron olvidadas y han evolucionado en el mundo del videojuego de maneras diferentes. Existen muchas más tipologías, por supuesto, con el arte low-tech. Aunque minoritario en el mundo artístico, el arte low-tech ofrece un fresco, creativo y plenamente actual movimiento, ya que mezcla y apoya otras tendencias creativas que comparten buena parte de su ideología, como el activismo, el biohacking, la potenciación del software libre en el arte digital o el reciclaje. El elogio del low-tech de Rodrigo Alonso, por ejemplo, es un texto que resume muy bien el contexto en el cual la baja tecnología se ha venido desarrollando en los últimos años. Este texto lo pueden encontrar en el libro de Andrés Urbano y Hernán Barragán, Hipercubo, que Arte, Ciencia y Tecnología en Contextos Próximos. Muchas gracias por su tiempo y ahora van a poder escuchar las intervenciones y los proyectos de los artistas que van a hablar de diferentes temáticas. Hoy hay 2 estudiantes, mañana viernes van a haber 3 y el sábado van a haber otros 3 estudiantes. Las investigaciones son muy interesantes y la verdad son, de cierta forma, tocan a todo lo que es nuevos medios y low technology desde ciertos puntos de vista muy diferentes. Do you have questions? No? Okay. Ok. Bueno, muchas gracias.
Hello, hola. My name is Sanet Stegmann, and I am an interior and product designer from South Africa. I'm currently doing the Masters in Transdisciplinary New Media at the Paris College of Art. The project I would like to discuss with you today, you can see in the graph that my past is that I'm focused on interior design and product design, but I'm bringing new media into the practice of what I do, mainly guided by human experience. Interested in the interaction of people in spaces, I use that as my main guide and starting point for projects. And the accessibility of spaces that people can use is of utmost importance to me. And I use that as a conceptual starting point. Looking at the tactile element of surfaces and the way that that is translated into spaces is what interests me. Focusing on low technology as part of our core lab, I mean, low tech, to define low tech these days is such a complex topic. As the rate at which technology is advancing, something that is seen as high technology today is tomorrow redefined as low technology. For that reason, I decided to look at low tech in its purest form, in one of its purest forms, and that is handwriting. I think it's also because relocating to a different city and having to survive in a context where you're not able to understand the language, letters are redefined as symbols, and that in a sense makes a space inaccessible. And it's for that reason that I'm looking at text and the accessibility and its potential to create boundaries. So looking at handwriting, how we analyze handwriting, how we all have our individual mark that we make, but also looking at text in the times we are living in. We're surrounded by so much information, and we're able to access information with a click of a button, yet we are not able to process all the information that we have access to. And for that reason, text is also something that interests me. Looking at different movements where text was used as a medium, for example, Fluxus from the 1960s, text was redefined in actually saying nothing, investigating what that could mean if you combine words, and not necessarily wanting to make a statement, except making a statement that is neutral. Artists such as Guillaume, where calligraphs were used to use text as a medium to create different shapes and forms and visuals, is a really interesting movement in text. Then also looking at contemporary artists that uses text through video installations, where when you look at the installation, at first it looks like a handwriting text and a letter, only later realizing in the installation that it was a machine that actually did the writing. So it's an interesting concept how text is translated these days. Looking at more artists that uses text, just using a context, and I think for that reason, artwork like this is intriguing for me, as it uses architecture as a palette and a canvas, but just the content of the words and the context in which the words are displayed changes the artwork's experience completely. Yes, these artworks are even like this work where two-dimensional text is explored by creating a woven texture, making it more tactile and three-dimensional. Then to focus on the project and how I would like to incorporate text and exploring what low-tech is using this as a medium, the tactile nature of text and people's experience of text is intriguing. If you look at Braille, which consists of 6 digits and yet combined in a specific way, has a symbolic meaning to it. Looking at a basic geometric shape, how the texture of that can be translated into architecture, into urban spaces, where a texture redefines how it is interpreted, where a texture change on the ground will make you understand how your movement is guided in a subtle way, and yet we use it every day to orientate ourselves. The multitude of texts that we find ourselves surrounded with is explored in how this concept can be translated into a space, into a physical space, to also comment on how easily we use text these days with technology, high technology that we use every single day, smartphones, iPads. We so easily able to communicate with text, and that is universal. With a click of the button, you can send text to anywhere in the world. And somehow I want to pull that back and look at how words have a solid core. And if we look at that in a low-tech way, that could be explored in so many different ways. To also put that into a universal context, the three-dimensionality of words, where text has become something that we experience on a flat two-dimensional surface mostly, and also in a digital capacity, taking text out of that context and exploring it in a three-dimensional state is also a way to reinterpret how we experience text. Even looking at how we see letters as individual symbols combined can have an interesting effect. On the right, you can see how a shape is created by using individual letters to create a shape, and read that in a completely different dimension, where it is just a basic word that you can see there. So this project, I aim to find the codependent nature of the narrative between human interaction and the context it's explored. Accustomed symbols are explored in a variety of amalgamations within a defined space to develop a dialogue between the space and the user. The engagement with the connector, the viewer, within the context is only fully discovered through human interaction. Questions?
There is a question about, do you think like cloud technology could create universal language? Is it important? Do you think it is important?
I think it's definitely important, and I think low technology definitely has the capacity and the potential to create a universal language. I think that is also something that I would like to explore as part of this project, seeing that text in different contexts and in different combinations can create symbols that we read in a different way, and it therefore has quite an abstract nature to it if we can redefine it and utilize it on a low-tech level.
Do you have questions about it?
No?
No? Okay.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Basma Seif. I'm an Egyptian architect. I've worked in several projects in the field of architecture design, urban design, and environmental design. Well, I was hoping to. I'm interested in tackling the field of architecture and urban environment in their relationship to the field of space perception. As an architect, I would like to investigate how space perception plays a role in architecture. So, according to me as an architect, the definition of space perception is like architects have a third eye or something. When a normal person goes into a room, they might notice the vibrant colors, the comfy chairs, the patterns of the carpet. But architects have a sixth sense, as I call it. Our architect eyes and senses look for symmetry, hierarchy, order, scale, proportion, dominance, and repetition. So my definition of space perception for a city scale would be the gathering of information, such as visible landmarks, sounds around you. For example, you hear the sound of a train going by, a certain scent associated with that place. You absorb all the information in based on your knowledge and past experience, and then you process it and organize it, and then you form a mental map based on your reflection from your own experience. In my opinion, the more intense the interaction is with the space around you, the better the mental map you form. So, the factors that affect the perception of a space: the form of the space and the objects forming it, the color of the object forming the space and the lights surrounding it, the ratio between solid and void, the motions of the object in space and their relationship with the static, non-moving objects, sounds surrounding the object forming the spaces and the sounds produced from the objects, and most of all, your previous personal experience associated with that place. So I deeply believe that the city and its urban structure and fabric design, especially the way we perceive it, they shape our existence and are responsible for our happiness and health, or the lack of it. It has a really profound effect on our psychological health and how we interact with the city and how we interact with one another. As proved in the book, The Happy City, which proves the theory that urban design has a life-shaping power which isn't always obvious but has huge consequences for people, the economy, and the planet. In my opinion, while sometimes we can't really easily change the real urban fabric or structure of a city, but we can easily try to change our perception of it. There are several ways we can alter our perception of existing architectural buildings using pointers and additions that simulate our five senses. For example, the addition of certain lights and interactive technology and artistic installation to help us have a better, more personal perception of the space. And regarding my personal point of view of Google Maps, that it is a catch-22. As much as it's useful in orienting people around and saving time to get to their destination, it steals from them their personal experience and perception of the space surrounding. It limits the interaction to their phone screen. So it shows. So
Which one? This one?
So basically, I was thinking of my project is redefining the perception of Paris landmarks and its surrounding space. So there are a couple of approaches I'm thinking about, like approaching the project. the first approach was to create new monuments, replacing the old one, using Google Maps and three-dimensional art installations as maquettes, and studying its effect on the surrounding space, how it would change the urban space around it, and how will it change people's perception in that space. For example, if you design a new monument instead of the Concorde or the Opera, but make it more interactive and perceptive, adding like an extra depth to it, like the sense of touch, smell, all these factors contribute to our experience as humans. And seeing how would that change our perception of the space surrounding it. And the other approach was like adding sub-landmarks leading to the bigger landmark of the city using Google Maps. Well, for example, you're using Google Maps and along the way of the route, you're hearing sounds, like hearing stories about the places you're moving throughout. And so I was thinking of like adding more depth into the perception of the landmarks of Paris.
It's an interesting approach. If architecture is form and function, do you use the same approach in low tech?
Yes, as an architect, I believe that form and function are essential in like everything, because low tech, we're gonna use the same approach in low tech to create a functional product at the end.
So we could say that we could use those methodologies, or even like, well, architecture is physics and it's mathematics.
Yes.
And so we're kind of using the same science to get inspired to
Yes.
develop your project.
Yes.
Is there more questions?
There's another question. So perception of space in low tech is kind of limited to the user experience?
Yes, in my opinion, it's not limited, but it mainly focuses on the user experience.
So what is going to be the user experience in your project? The idea is that the user actually is going to be traveling through your Google Maps monuments, or
Sub-landmarks.
and how is the interaction?
Well, I was thinking of an approach like auditory interaction. They would hear like stories about the place, listen to voices in previous days. So
you will try and incorporate, or you focus on one, like
one sense,
text,
yes.
sight, auditory. You will decide which will be the focus, or do you want to incorporate more than one?
No, I think I'll focus on just one.
Okay.
And what is that landmark that you want to explore? I mean, you can focus on one landmark, right? No.
Yeah, one sense.
One sense. Okay,
Yes.
so what is that sense?
Most probably it's auditory.
But you will need to also orientate yourself with sight to where you are.
Yes.
So in a sense, you will utilize all your senses as we do whilst we're experiencing things. But yet you will focus on creating experiences focused on one sense.
Yes.
Okay. And how do you plan to incorporate if you decide to go with sound, how will you try and incorporate that into your design of the experience?
Well, most people have phones, iPads, iPods.
Mm-hmm.
So it's gonna be like basically you're moving along this place, and when you hit a certain spot on Google Maps,
Yes.
then the voice would play. The voice of the place would play.
Uh-huh.
So it's kind of a wearable technology
Yes.
kind of thing.
Yes.
So, and then you're going to be using your personal, because this is going to be your perception.
Yes, my perception of getting around in Paris and viewing the landmarks, but will also help certain people shape like an in-depth perception of their roots.
Okay.
And then if you, to determine, because Paris is such a cultural rich city, how do you decide which landmarks you will focus on? Will it be historic references or art-orientated references?
I think they will be touristic oriented, like the Tour Eiffel, which like when you think of Paris, the first thing that pops in your mind is Tour Eiffel. I'm going like to work on these landmarks that define Paris.
Yes.
To everyone, not just historians or artists.
So it's the well-known sites that we're all familiar with.
Yes.
But in a way, you would try to redefine how we experience it because it is so familiar to us.
Yes.
Interesting.
It's interesting to see how the law technology actually, based on something that has a function, and is inspired by something that was mechanical in the past, still a machine or an instrument, can be somehow with law technology, then it's touching these different fields of what is virtual and reality, and then how Basma is working with that project and trying to create this kind of a path or travel through Paris, and yeah, we're working with architecture, right, which is something, it's a science, it's something like, really structure, at the same time we're working with something like law technology that could be something we don't really know, and the definition is changing all the time, and yeah, it's different. And now, yeah, what is important is to see how even architecture today is using law technology the way that probably things were built in the past for today, because high technology is not only the answer,
But it's like basically taking a familiar experience for someone like traveling with Google Maps and adding an in-depth to the experience, because when you're like walking around with your phone and just like concentrating on to getting there, you miss all the experience around you and you miss everything. But I want to add like experience to the journey itself, to the route itself, like interaction, more perception of that route.
Yes, and also because the urban spaces in Paris is utilized by a lot of people. People live outdoors and utilize different ways of moving around, and that could also be investigated, how you could possibly incorporate urban spaces.
Yes, I think.
As neutral spaces. Well, yes, neutral spaces in the sense that we use neutral spaces to walk around towards monuments and galleries like the ones that you will be exploring, but possibly making that part of the experience. As you said, it's a journey and you're trying to redefine how we experience that.
Yes.
And also the historical side of Paris, because Paris is a very historical, and then you have this nostalgia of, it's kind of a lot of technology is based on the things we don't have anymore.
Yes.
And then somehow we miss those things. So here we're using a lot of technology to go back to these probably places that we don't go anymore, or abandoned places or secret places.
Yes. So it could be interesting to in the way that you filter which monuments and elements that you will use for the project, because it could be an interesting way to get people to experience the ones that isn't utilized as much as the most familiar ones, which is already supported by tourists and locals, and so that could be interesting to investigate what that could be.
Yes, and if you look at a map of Paris of the monumental landmarks, it's like there's no space without a landmark. It's like basically filled everywhere. Historical, like artistic, there's a lot of types of landmarks, but I'm just going to focus on the well-known ones.
And then for you, Sanet, you were talking about also somehow is the space and the user experience. How do you define that user experience with the text, which is something, I don't know, somehow.
Yes, I think for me it's important to have a tactile element as part of this project. Using handwriting for me is a logical output that we create. It's an individual mark that is created by each individual in a different way. For me, it's important to try and incorporate the way we use text on such a high-tech way to almost simplify it again and filter it back to its original state, but utilizing low-tech in an installation setup where text would be experienced in a way where it's simplified again, but yet it needs to be reinterpreted by human experience, and by the interaction, it will be in context and understandable.
Okay, great. Well, looking forward to see your projects. The Digital Week first, and then at the end of the year, we're going to be probably showing at Saatchi and Saatchi on low-tech project. Can you put the last one? I don't know how do we start this one. Hello.